first time you got your heart broken? Most of us have been through a breakup or a loss that left us totally devastated. So painful that it literally feels like things will never get better. But after some time to heal, we can see the joy in life again and the light at the end of the tunnel. That wasn't the case for Alan Ionov, who claims that he was driven to total madness after he and his long-term girlfriend parted ways. What Alan did to deal with his heartbreak was not only terrible, but deadly. Let's dive in. To get to the root of this story, we aren't going to look at what kind of person Alan Ionov was before this happened, but rather his main intended victim, Anna Bowie. Born in 1997, Anna was raised in Everett, Washington by her parents, who described her as someone who was joyful and caring. She loved to hang out with her friends and wanted to do something with her life that would allow her to give back to people. She went to Kamiak High School and was said to be an excellent student who participated in the school choir. A lot of people remember her for being a beautiful singer. This is where she also met Alan Ionov, and the two started dating. Safe to say she had no idea what she was getting into. Anna and Alan dated for a pretty long time, and he would later say she was the first girl he ever kissed and was ever in love with. They seemed like a totally normal couple. They even went on trips together, like Disneyland. They both graduated from high school in 2015 and enrolled in the University of Washington. Anna was hoping to become a nursing assistant, and Alan was majoring in computer science and engineering. Somewhere down the line, their relationship stopped working for whatever reason. This happens for a lot of young couples. People change as they go from teens to adults, and sometimes things just fizzle out, you know? But here's the part that makes this case even crazier. Alan was the one to end things. Why is that important, you might be asking? Well, after their relationship ended, Alan started acting really strange, while Anna was out there living her best life. You can see from her Instagram that in the few months before she passed away, she was having the best time traveling the world in the summer after finishing her first year at college. It's so sad to see how full of life she was, knowing what happened to her just a short time after she posted her last picture. As we now know, Alan was in a totally different place to Anna. Reportedly, after the breakup, his mental health started to really go downhill, and he started acting impulsively and aggressively. He talked often about being jealous of Anna and any other guys in his life. Things got so bad that he even thought about his life. Now, here's something important to remember that makes me super mad. His parents knew that he was struggling. Apparently, for a long time, he'd struggled with mental illness and even been to a specialist before because he threatened to do something to harm himself. The specialist said that it was super important for Alan to get some help, but he and his mom decided against it. Things got noticeably worse for Alan after the breakup, which is pretty ironic, and even though those close to him knew he was on a downward spiral, no one did anything to help him. That isn't to say I think his mental health justifies what he did, because it definitely does not. However, could it have been prevented if someone took notice and got him the help he clearly needed? Absolutely. The month before the horrifying event that would destroy so many lives, Alan bought a gun, an AR-15 to be exact. An AR-15 is a semi-automatic rifle that can fire a lot of bullets in short bursts and can do a lot of damage in the wrong hands. The scary thing is, despite his mental state and history of mental illness, Alan had no trouble buying the gun and taking it home that same day. His parents both knew about his strange purchase, and all they did was call the store to ask if he could return it, but they never did. Time went by, and as Anna's life was just getting started, Alan had already made plans to destroy it. On July 30th, 2016, a bunch of people from their high school class were going to a house party in Mukilteo, including Anna. In the days leading up to the party, Alan sent some pretty disturbing texts to a friend of his and pretty much told him he planned to turn up to the party with his new weapon, calling himself a future shooter. Reportedly, Alan tried one last thing before going forward with his deadly plan. On July 29th, he tried to get back together with Anna, but she rejected him, which makes sense considering he was the one who ended things. On that same day, she posted her last photo to Instagram, a selfie of her and her friend out kayaking. No idea what was about to happen. On the day of the party, Alan texted the same friend as before and said he was going to go there and shoot everyone. The friend clearly didn't take his threat seriously because instead of calling for help, he told Alan to go and hunt deer instead of thinking about Anna. Alan said no, he'd made the decision. He pulled up to the party that night in his car and apparently just sat there for about 2 hours. In that time, he watched people at the party and literally read the instruction manual for the gun, which goes to show just how unprepared he was for this. He'd even told his friend he planned to get gun safety lessons so he didn't mess up. He sent one last text to his friend saying he was going to start shooting in 2 minutes, but sat in the car for a further 90 minutes. He decided to go forward with his plan after he spotted Anna, who was talking to another guy. He got out of the car, walked up to the house, and opened fire. 3 people lost their lives that night, including Anna. Jacob Long was 19. He stumbled across Alan as he was creeping up to the house and died due to 3 bullet injuries in his back. His next 2 victims were also just outside the house. Will Kramer managed to flee the scene, despite also obtaining a bullet in his back, and hid further away from the house and managed to call the police. Jordan Ebner wasn't so lucky. He also died outside the house and was discovered on a walkway just a few feet from Jacob. Then, Alan went into the house and found Anna sitting at the kitchen table. He didn't even hesitate before firing at her and hitting her straight in the head. Finally, he went up to the balcony outside the main bedroom and fired his weapon at anyone he could see outside before he ran out of ammo and ran. Amazingly, he didn't injure anyone else. Alan got back in his car and sped away from the scene, making it 100 miles before he was caught by the police and arrested 90 minutes after the incident.
God, please forgive me. God, please let me die.
He was arrested on 3 counts of aggravated murder, but that isn't the end of the story. After being found guilty on all counts, Alan decided to give a statement at his sentencing, and what he had to say shocked a lot of people.
However, I'd like everyone to hear loud and clear that it was the ease of acquiring a gun that enabled me to act on my emotions.
In his speech, it seemed like Alan really wasn't interested in taking responsibility for his actions. He blamed it on his mental health, on his uncontrolled emotions, even on the devil. But whatever he admitted to, he also made sure to mention that it wasn't entirely his fault. This angered a lot of people. The families of those that were injured and lost their lives made speeches too, and nobody had anything favorable to say about Alan.
It appears to me that Mr. Ivanov was raised as a spoiled brat, that he was given whatever he wanted whenever he wanted it.
But what was clearer than anything was just how heartbroken the whole community was over the loss of these lives and the impact it would have on them forever.
He loved his friend so much, and then there's a coward with a gun comes and takes it all away.
Despite requests from some family members for Alan to receive capital punishment, he was sentenced to life behind bars without the possibility of parole. That means he will never leave prison again. Anna's family filed a lawsuit against Alan's parents, claiming there were things they could have done to prevent this from happening. Her family also started a scholarship program to honor Anna's memory, giving other students the opportunity to travel the world just as she had done before she passed away.
I try to think about what she would want for us if she was here today. She wouldn't want us to be sad.
Now, we can all agree that breakups are hard, and sometimes they can get pretty messy. Still, we somehow manage to get over them and move on with our lives. But what about those who don't? This is the chilling story of the jealous teen who set her boyfriend on fire after a breakup. And the most disturbing part, she wasn't alone. Let's get into it. Seth Jackson was a typical teenage boy living in Summerfield, Florida. His parents described him as friendly, outgoing, and popular with the girls. While in high school, Seth started dating a girl by the name of Amber Wright, and the two seemed very much in love, even posting their relationship on social media for everyone to see.
So today's our 2-week anniversary. Seth and Amber forever.
Best 2 weeks.
Then, just weeks later, the pair broke up, and that's when the drama started. Seth was pissed to learn that Amber had already started dating an 18-year-old guy called Michael Bargo. So he went on Facebook and started posting some nasty things about Amber, calling her an addict and the S word. Amber reciprocated by saying some equally nasty things about Seth, accusing him of cheating on her and hitting her. The two went back and forth for days. Then, on April 17th, 2011, Seth was at a friend's house when he received a series of texts from Amber asking him to meet her so they could work things out. His friends found this really suspicious and warned him not to go. But Seth had been more caught up by the breakup than he was letting on, and so he agreed to see her, but said, "Amber, if you have me jumped, I will never give you the time of day. So if I get jumped, say goodbye, all right?" She assured him that it was okay and that it will only be the two of them. That evening, Seth went to the rural trailer home of Amber's friend, Charlie Eli. He never came back from there. When Seth didn't come home that night, his parents immediately knew that something was wrong. Seth was always responsible and would call his mom every time to notify her of his whereabouts. And so when he didn't call his mom called the cops and reported him missing. The police first saw this as a runaway case. But what if something more was involved? They started looking at Seth's phone records and saw the text messages between Seth and Amber, and found that he had gone to meet up with Amber when he disappeared. So investigators went to talk to Amber, who admitted that she had met up with Seth, but that he left soon after. That same day, Amber was at home watching TV with her mom and stepbrother Kyle Hooper when the news about Seth's disappearance came up. And as they were watching, Kyle said something like, "He's not missing, he's dead." His mom was really shocked about Kyle's statement and asked him if he knew about Seth's disappearance. And that's when Kyle opened up and told her everything that happened. The mom immediately called the police, and Kyle went ahead to confess everything. He said that Amber had Seth come over to Charlie's house so that they could talk, and Michael shot Seth and that he was dead.
Got into the kitchen, I said no pulse, and then all of a sudden I hear bam, 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 Mike sitting there laying bullets. And so you saw Mike Bargo shoot Seth?
But that's not all that happened, guys. As police would later find out, the things that happened that evening were nothing short of evil. Amber was brought in for questioning, and she repeated the same thing as her brother, claiming that she was an innocent bystander and that Michael had threatened her. She said that she and Charlie went to Charlie's room to sleep until 11 a.m. or 12 p.m. the next day. The detective found this really disturbing because how can anyone be able to sleep when their ex was being brutally murdered? Investigators then brought in Charlie and placed him in the same room as Amber and Kyle, hoping that they would start discussing the crime, and they did. They started saying how they just murdered Seth and that he was not innocent. Kyle allegedly said, "Seth is not innocent. He threatened to hurt my sister and burn my house down." So, what really happened? Apparently, Amber had told the others that Seth had hit her, and Michael suggested that they kill him, and they all agreed. They came up with a twisted plan whereby Amber would lure Seth over to Charlie's house, and they would all jump him and take his life. Kyle was the first to attack. He hit Seth in the head with a wooden stick, and then another guy called Justin Soto joined in. Michael then came in and shot Seth 2 times. Somehow Seth was still alive and managed to crawl out of the house and even made it to the road before Michael shot him again. They then dragged him back inside and put him in the bathtub, and then get this, broke his kneecaps because Michael apparently wanted to roll his body into a sleeping bag. And it gets worse. After they've rolled Seth into a sleeping bag, they took him outside and burned him alive. How sick is that? Can you imagine the pain that he must have gone through before he finally passed on? And these monsters actually stayed up all night drinking and partying and watching Seth's body burn. Neighbors would later recall seeing the terrifyingly high flames, but they thought that the teens were just having a party and had lit a bonfire.
We just saw a bunch of kids partying. You know, kids will be kids. We didn't expect anything until we started hearing some shots.
But even after they heard the shots, the neighbors assumed that they were just firecrackers and didn't think much of it. And things would get even more disturbing, guys. When all that's left of Seth was ash and bone fragments, they shoveled his remains into paint buckets and threw them in a nearby quarry, and then cleaned the crime scene with bleach. And get this, Michael's stepdad, James Haven, actually helped them dispose of the remains and cover up the crime. How messed up is that? James would later say that he heard the group discussing the murder plot, but thought they were joking.
I thought it was a joke because, I don't know what to say because I'm looking at a lot of years right now.
Police were able to recover Seth's remains after sending a dive team into the quarry. They also recovered more evidence in the house where Seth was murdered, and a few days later, all 6 suspects were arrested in connection to Seth's death. There was trial after trial as Seth's devastated family fought for justice. Amber's stepbrother Kyle and Justin Soto were sentenced to life without parole. Charlie, who lived at the crime scene, was also given life, but she managed to appeal and got 10 years instead. She was released in 2020 after having served 9 years. Michael's stepfather also got 10 years after pleading guilty to accessory after the fact. Michael's trial made the biggest headlines as he became the youngest person on Florida's death row. His defense team tried to blame his behavior on troubled childhood and his parents' messy divorce, but it didn't work. When it came to Amber, things were a little bit more complicated. During her first trial in 2012, she claimed that she didn't know that the violence would lead to Seth's death. Of course, the jury didn't buy this, and she was given a life sentence. But then, this was overturned on a technicality because she wasn't read her Miranda rights correctly when she was arrested. So she got another trial in which she was again found guilty of first-degree homicide. Even though she wasn't the one who pulled the trigger, many felt that she was the one who caused the killing. Now guys, this is a pretty messed up case, but you might be shocked to learn that it's not actually the first of its kind. The other case was featured on Oprah in 1992, and it involved a high school cheerleader called Phyllis. She told Oprah how when she was 14, she was dating 2 guys who were both in their 20s and were both named Jimmy. She referred to them as Jimmy number 1 and Jimmy number 2. For some reason, her relationship with Jimmy 2 was not working out. So instead of breaking up with him like what normal people do, she conspired with Jimmy number 1 to kill the other Jimmy. Yeah, I know, pretty messed up.
You were seeing both of them at the same time. Why would you want to kill them?
At the time, you have to understand, I was torn between the two. I didn't know which one I wanted.
Phyllis and Jimmy number 1 came up with a plan whereby Phyllis would lure Jimmy 2 into the woods and Jimmy 1 would ambush him and finish him off. So on that particular day, Phyllis convinced Jimmy 2 to meet her in the woods, saying that she wanted to show him some marijuana plants. But when Jimmy 2 showed up, Jimmy 1, who was hiding somewhere in the bushes, started firing at him.
I heard Jimmy number 2 scream, and again, I still actually thought that, he's just playing around, and I turned around and looked, and I seen that he had been shot.
According to Phyllis, Jimmy 1 fired a couple more times before he came back out to check if Jimmy 2 was dead. Jimmy 2 was at this time laying on the ground mourning, and Jimmy 1 kicked him in the head several times.
He walked over to him and he kicked him in the head and told him, he said, "You deserve it, you sorry son of a..."
Then Phyllis said that Jimmy 1 stole all the money from Jimmy 2 and then decided to burn his body. It's not clear whether Jimmy 2 was alive or dead at this time, but I really hope he was. They went out and got gasoline, which they poured all over Jimmy 2 and set him on fire. I know I've said this like a million times before, but this is really insane. Where do you even get the guts to do something this awful to another human being? And they did not even stop there. They had expected to see the body burn into ashes, and when they realized that was not going to happen, they decided to throw it into a river.
After we realized that, Jimmy picked the body up and put it in the back of the truck, okay? Drove off to a saltwater creek, and discarded the body into the salt water.
Afterward, they used the money they had stolen to buy a motorbike and went to the beach, acting like they didn't just kill someone. Luckily, the 2 were later arrested and are now serving time in prison. What's the craziest thing that you've ever done for love? We've all done some pretty dumb stuff for someone that we ended up regretting soon after. But what this girl did went way overboard and destroyed her life. Let's dive in. Sarah Ludman was born on December 7th, 1990 to Gay and Charlie Ludman. She grew up in a loving family and was very close with her parents. For most of her childhood, she had been a little overweight and she was always getting teased by her age mates. As you can imagine, this really messed up her self-esteem growing up. Sarah was a straight A student, loved animals, and hoped to become a veterinarian in the future. Everything seemed to be going well for her until she met Joshua Camucho. Sarah had never had a boyfriend before, so when she met Josh at 17, she fell madly in love. Her parents noticed the sudden change in their daughter's behavior and didn't really like it. Sarah's grades had started slipping, she was skipping school, and was also losing weight. Her mom and dad felt that Josh was a bad influence on their innocent daughter. He was a well-known player and a bad boy. He was a smooth talker, smoked, had tattoos, and took pictures with He lived at home with his mom, had no job, and mostly depended on the girls he dated for income. Really, there was nothing going on for this guy, but somehow girls worshipped the ground he walked on. Sarah's parents knew that they could not stop their daughter from seeing him, so they decided to let the relationship run its course. But instead of ending, this teenage love affair only got more intense, to the point that Sarah transferred to Pinellas Park High School so she could be close to Josh. She was so into Josh that she was willing to do anything for him. But sadly, it turns out their relationship was totally one-sided, because while she was still swooning over Josh, he was seeing other girls on the side. And one of them was his ex-girlfriend, Rachel Wade. Rachel was born on February 27th, 1990, to Barry and Janet Wade. She grew up in a happy and loving household and was mostly a well-behaved girl. But then when she reached 15, something inside her changed. She became really rebellious and constantly fought with her parents. She ran away from home so many times that her parents got tired of constantly searching, and instead they would just call the cops on her. Rachel was also known as a big flirt around town and had a long string of boyfriends. When she was 17, Rachel finally decided that she had it being controlled by her parents. So she moved out, got her own apartment, and started working as a waitress at Applebee's. And that's when she met Josh. When Josh started dating Sarah, he was also seeing Rachel and another girl with whom he ended up having a kid with. For a while, things worked smoothly for him. Sarah had an 11 p.m. curfew, and Rachel didn't get off work until late in the evening, so he was able to juggle time with his two girlfriends. And for his baby mama, she was so used to seeing him with other girls that it pretty much stopped bothering her. When Rachel and Sarah finally found out about each other, things got crazy. Sarah was the first one to find out after Rachel posted pictures of her and Josh on Facebook. Sarah got mad jealous and confronted Josh about it. And he basically said, yeah, I was sleeping with her. This was totally not the reaction she was expecting, and she got really angry. But instead of fighting Josh, she decided to go for her rival. And that was when things really went down. Sarah posted pictures of her and Josh on a trip to New York, and as expected, Rachel was furious when she saw them. She went on MySpace to lash out at Josh, posting, "I deserve so much better" on her page. But Sarah just made fun of her, saying, "You think you can find better?" Rachel got so mad, and she called and left a very angry voicemail.
Honestly, what do you have that's going for you that Josh wants you over me for?
And that was just the beginning. The two girls were on an all-out war mode, and no one was willing to back down. They started writing mean things about each other on social media, they sent threatening text messages, and left some really disturbing voicemails on each other's phones. And Josh was not helping the situation at all. He continued dating both of them, and he was not even trying to hide it anymore. He would be with Rachel one day and Sarah the next day. It was like he enjoyed seeing the two girls fighting over him and even encouraged it. After a while, the fighting had gotten way out of hand, and the girls were now stalking each other and doing some really awful stuff to one another. One time, Sarah and her friends went to Rachel's job and started harassing her. They tried to trip her, knock over her tray, and during karaoke, they sang the song "Girl Fight," pointing at her and taunting. Another time, Sarah chased Rachel down with her car and sprayed her with silly string. On the evening of April 14th, 2009, Rachel was alone in her apartment waiting for Josh when she heard Sarah outside her house shouting, "Stay away from my man." Rachel would later tell the police that she got really scared and thought that Sarah and her friends were waiting to ambush her. She grabbed a steak knife and called an old boyfriend, Javier LeBoy, who told her to come over to his house. So Rachel waited for Sarah to leave and got into her car with the knife and went to Javier's house. Meanwhile, Sarah went to Josh's house to watch a movie and play video games with Josh and his friends. At 11 p.m., Sarah got a text from her dad reminding her about curfew, but as she was about to leave, Rachel started texting Josh. "Rachel, now I know why you're not talking to me. You got her." Josh, "That's right, I don't like you no more. Why don't you go home?" Rachel, "No, I'll wait for her to go home." Sarah was furious about it, and she called Rachel and they started fighting over the phone and threatening each other. Just before midnight, Sarah decided to go home, and Josh's sister asked her for a ride to McDonald's. While on their way, they got a tip that Rachel was at Javier's house, and Sarah decided to go and confront her. Sarah pulled over at Javier's, and Rachel came running towards her.
They both met in the middle of the street. Sarah threw the first punch. Rachel ducked her head down and just kind of started flailing her arms.
It looked like a normal catfight between two teenage girls and lasted for a few seconds. But when the fight finally stopped, Sarah was laying on the ground with a stab wound in her chest. Rachel just stood there with a blank look on her face and said, "I'm done." She threw the knife on the roof of a neighbor's house. Then Sarah, who was now bleeding out, did something that shocked everyone. She managed to walk to her car while clutching her chest. She took out her phone and guess who she called? Josh. She called him and said, "It hurts." That's insane. She was mortally wounded because of this boy, and instead of calling her family or 911, she called Josh. It's actually pretty sad. Anyways, Josh rushed over to Sarah's home and told her dad. I can't imagine how her dad must have felt to have learned that his daughter got hurt fighting for a boy and that her last words were to this boy. Sarah was taken to the hospital, but sadly did not make it. Rachel broke down into tears when the police later told her that Sarah had passed away from her injuries.
The next piece of information that you need to know is that she is dead.
She told the police that she didn't mean to hurt Sarah and that she was only defending herself. She said that she had even forgotten that she was holding a knife when they started fighting.
I just wanted them to finally leave me alone. She's not going to follow you anymore because she's dead now.
Rachel was arrested and charged with second-degree homicide. During her trial, the prosecution brought up the history between the two girls to show that Rachel intended to end Sarah's life. They painted her as a vindictive girlfriend who took a knife with the intent to harm Sarah. The defense used Florida's Stand Your Ground law to show that Rachel was just acting in self-defense. The Stand Your Ground law says that someone doesn't have to run away from an attacker and can meet force with force if they feel their life is in danger. However, several witnesses came forward to testify that Rachel actually found Sarah in the car and stabbed her. They said that they heard Rachel threatening Sarah a few minutes before the incident. Josh also came in as a witness, and he was asked what his relationship was with Sarah, and he said they were just friends with benefits. Can you believe that? He said that he and Sarah were not really dating and that they could see who they wanted to see. What a jerk, right? I feel so bad for Sarah and Rachel because they both thought that they were literally defending their relationship with this guy when he was probably seeing some other girls out there. Now Sarah was dead and Rachel's life was destroyed, all for nothing. The jury also listened to some disturbing voicemails that Rachel had left on Sarah's phone.
Now your ass is mine, and I'm guaranteeing you I'm gonna murder you. I'm gonna kill you.
Rachel testified that she was upset when she left that voicemail and that she didn't really mean it.
I was upset. I was getting harassing phone calls just like she would tell me she was gonna kick. I just retaliated and I said things. I said it out of anger and I was very upset.
But the jury was not convinced and they found her guilty of second-degree homicide. Rachel started crying when she heard the verdict. Sarah's heartbroken parents later asked the judge to give Rachel a life sentence for what she did, but the judge sentenced her to 27 years behind bars, though he said he believed Rachel intended to take Sarah's life. Rachel still maintained that she was innocent and that she was only acting in self-defense. She later appealed her case but lost. Rachel is currently serving time at Lowell Correctional Institution and regrets everything that happened. In a TV interview in 2011, she said that she wished that she could have done things differently.
I try to think of what I could have done differently, and I could have tried to approach her and tell her, you know, it's not me, it's not you, it's him.
That's the end of our video today. What do you think about this case? Did Rachel really mean to take Sarah's life? Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section.